Welcome back to the ChillMoms podcast. I'm your host, Dawn Kummer, and I'm a mindset and spiritual coach who help women entrepreneurs to connect with their intuition, overcome imposter syndrome, and cultivate feminine energy. You can find me on Instagram at Dawn K Coaching. Are you ready for the show? Let's get started. In today's episode, we have Sheetal Sujan. She's a founder of Libera Training, Coaching and Consulting, and Libera Learning LLC. She develops and facilitates tailor-made training programs for organizations in areas of self-development, team development, leadership development, customer service, communication, and emotional intelligence. In today's episode, she will share about emotional intelligence and how can you use that into your day-to-day life with your children and education. She's passionate about helping individuals and teams thrive in their personal and work relationships, steering individuals to understand the personal impact they make in their lives and the lives of others. Are you ready for the show? Let's get started. Hi, Sheetal. Thank you so much for being on here on the ChillMoms podcast. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Sheetal Sujan. I am a certified trainer and coach. I believe in transformations, and I do trainings in customer service, in team buildings, in productivity, in leadership. And my most favorite program would be programs in emotional intelligence.
Amazing. Would you like to talk more about the emotional part of it? Because I feel like that's something that I've never really heard of. So the floor is yours.
Yes. So my journey with emotional intelligence started when I was in college. When in my 20s, I was really confused about what I wanted to do with my life. Like most 20-year-olds, what are we going to do? What career are we going to get into? What will we do in our life? What kind of partner would we have? You know, you have all these questions. And I came across a tool called the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator. And I was told by my career advisor, take this assessment and it's going to give you some answers. So, I was all for looking for answers because I'd been looking for it for so many years. And when I finally did this assessment, I really got to know myself. Now, I didn't know at the time that these were emotional intelligence tools. I didn't even know what the words emotional intelligence was at the time. So I got so fascinated with self-awareness and really getting to know myself and then learning more about my emotions and enhancing my emotions, that when I finally came across emotional intelligence, everything pretty much started falling into place. I was able to pick a better career that really suited my personality. I found a partner who I could relate to, who I got married to eventually. We have 2 children, a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. I have a son and a daughter. It helped me during my pregnancy when I was dealing with hormones, and post-pregnancy even more so when I had sleepless nights and I could not sleep. And my children were growing up, and as a new mother, there's so many things that you don't know how to do, and your emotions start to get the better of you. But I found myself being really able to manage myself in those very difficult moments when I had no idea what I was doing. So I really, I would say that emotional intelligence has really helped me in all these different areas. And now as an entrepreneur, because I have my own business, I have 2 businesses. And, as a leader managing others, if it weren't for emotional intelligence, I don't think I'd be able to progress and move forward as I have today. So that's it pretty much in a nutshell, where it started and how it's just continuing on in my life.
That's amazing. And how do you use that in your, motherhood and teaching your children and also coaching your clients?
So emotional intelligence, to just give you a brief overview, has to do with how you manage yourself and how you manage others. And when it comes to emotional intelligence, I've been really able to look at, well, what are my children going through? Because, as adults, we have so many different emotions. We're doing emotions 24/7. I don't think there's ever a time that we shut our emotions. In fact, the person who said, hey, you know what, keep your emotions in the house, don't bring it to work, they didn't know what they were talking about because we're doing emotions all the time. It's just that when we're in a professional setting, we have to be more controlled. We have to understand where our emotions are coming from and manage them so we know how to behave in professional settings. And when we're at home, things are a little different. It's a little lighter. We're around people we love, so we can, really be ourselves. But when it comes to motherhood, I can say I really started to recognize how much it helped me when I became a new mom, when I just had my child. Now, the first 3 months, and this, are the hardest.
Yep.
Okay. There's absolutely no sleep. You're dealing with this newborn, this human being that you have to take care of. And it feels like your heart is outside your body and you're afraid of every little thing that could go wrong with your child. You're dealing with lots of emotions those first 3 months. And I learned to recognize where those emotions were coming from. When I had the fear, when I had the anxiety, when I was feeling tired and exhausted, when I was dipping in my emotions and I felt like, oh my goodness, is this how it's going to be for the rest of my life when it comes to my children? So I recognized where they were coming from, but I was able to manage them immediately as opposed to having those feelings stack up. See, as adults, sometimes what we do is that when stuff happens, we brush it aside, we ignore it, we'll neglect it and say, oh, I'll deal with it later. And what happens, it starts to stack up and it starts to stack up and eventually it builds up. And then one day there's this huge explosion and then you wonder what happened because we didn't deal with those emotions when they came to us at that moment. So as adults, we have to recognize when stuff happens, we can't brush it aside. We can't say, oh, I'll deal with it later. Oh, it's nothing. Never mind. I don't feel anything. The truth is that we feel everything all the time. We're just not ready to admit it. But when we do admit it, when we do recognize that stuff's happening on the inside, we can learn to manage it and deal with it, even if it means parking it for a little while and just getting back to say, hey, what just happened? Why was I going through this? Why was I feeling this? Or why did I have an outburst? Or why did I just start crying uncontrollably? When we start dealing with that head on, it stops stacking up and we become stronger as time goes on. So as mothers, we need to recognize where those emotions are coming from or why, we're getting these outbursts. Why do we start crying for no reason? Why is it that we're upset one moment and happy the other? And when we start to recognize this, we become mentally stronger and we can help our children do the same.
Absolutely. And I do think that part of it is because how we are encoded, as women, we are so naturally so giving and also nurturing. But at the same time, like after giving birth, we are going through all these hormonal changes. And right. I almost feel like a lot of women or a lot of moms lost who they are when they had a baby. And those kind of emotions, when we keep them in the box, like you said, we just, don't deal with it, and then eventually it explodes and it turns into this chaotic situation where we have an argument with our partner and we yell at our kids and then feed back to the negative cycle thinking that, oh my gosh, I'm the terrible mom, I'm the worst mom ever. And then it's just like going back in circle. Right. So how can you break that cycle, and what are some of the techniques that you use to bring that awareness of these are the feelings that you're having?
Right. No, I can totally relate to everything that you just said, because I went through that as well, where you lose your identity and you ask yourself, well, where do I go from here? Or who am I? And it doesn't help that your brain starts to change as well. And you start forgetting stuff and you feel like you've become absent-minded. But really, truthfully, we're just tired. We're just exhausted. Our body just created a human being. It's done so much. And then we have to birth that human being, and then we have to heal. I think the first thing you have to realize is you have to give yourself time to heal. A lot of times women don't do that. They don't, indulge in self-care. They don't realize that, hey, I just created a human being. And now I have to ensure that I am taking care of myself, that I have to heal from the inside out. And I'm not talking about just the wound, I'm talking about really mentally and emotionally, because we go through emotions even during our pregnancy. There's this anxiety, there's this anticipation for the baby. You're afraid sometimes. You want to make sure that the baby is okay, that everything is okay. Every time you go for, that sonogram to ensure, just to make sure the baby is okay, or to see your baby, you have this feeling in the pit of your stomach, like, oh my goodness, I hope everything's okay. I hope I don't see something I don't want to see, stuff like that happens in your head. So we're going through so many emotions from the moment we get pregnant till we have our babies. And honestly, I think till they're even growing up, it just changes over time. Now, how do you deal with that? I think the first thing that we have to acknowledge that those feelings are there, and that the feelings and the emotions that we have, they're normal. A lot of times, and I hear this from a lot of women, they think that there's something wrong with them when they go through those emotions. I think those are perfectly normal emotions. I don't believe that we have to have a straight face, or we have to be strong the entire time, or we have to be like, oh yeah, I can deal with this. It's okay if you can't deal with something. And you have to tell yourself that I can't deal with this right now, or these emotions are a bit too much or overwhelming. Sometimes that acceptance helps you deal with it better. When we start to fight with ourselves and we start to tell ourselves that this is not normal, or I shouldn't be feeling like this because I haven't felt this before, or because I felt stronger before, or because I don't want to feel vulnerable, that's when we start getting, on this emotional roller coaster where we're like, okay, what's going on here? Why am I, dealing with this? I think the first step is it's okay what you're going through, because that's part of the journey. And recognize that that's normal. If you need to cry, just cry. If you're feeling upset, acknowledge it and ask yourself, hey, what am I really upset about? What's the root cause? Where is this coming from? Because when we recognize where those emotions are coming from, and then we know how to name them, sometimes we don't know what we're feeling, and that's okay. And that can really upset us as well, when we're like, I don't know why I'm feeling this way, or this is driving me crazy and I don't know why. It's perfectly fine. Just let it simmer, let it be there, accept and acknowledge that right now you're frustrated, right now you're upset, right now you're not feeling good, right now you're going through this emotional roller coaster in your head. And when we start to accept that, that's when it makes it easier to start to regulate it, when we know what those emotions are. So the first step is naming them, and then the next step is regulating them and say, okay, well, what caused this? Sometimes it could be triggered by something totally random, and we start taking it out on something else. And that happens, right? We do it to our kids as well. We get upset about something else that we heard, and then we take it out on our kid. And then, the wrong person gets, your bad side. And you don't want that either, because you're like, oh my goodness, this happened and I took it out on my kid. So when we know what our emotions are, we're able to regulate them. And part of self-regulation is self-care. How am I taking care of myself? Knowing what I need when I'm dealing with an emotional roller coaster. Knowing what I need when I'm not feeling myself, or I'm not feeling good. And listen, moms, you're always going to go through different emotions throughout your life. You're going to be changing. You're not going to be the person you were before. I believe you only get better over time. And when you believe that you're getting better, when you believe that you're getting stronger, when you believe that this is just that next phase of your transformation, because guess what? We've transformed so much pre, during, and post-pregnancy. You will see how you start evolving, and evolving beautifully. But it really starts with that acceptance that this is okay. This is my transformation from not being a mom to finally becoming a mom, and now growing to this woman who is transformed from being a mom, but also still being able to identify with who I was before, but becoming this new person with more growth and more, understanding and more like just evolving as a woman.
Yeah.
So,
and I think we need to recognize that self-care and self-love, it's so underrated. And I know that a lot of us were thinking, oh, it's just self-care, just taking time for ourselves. Like, what does that, why is that important? But when we really separate ourselves, having that me time, really focusing in our inner needs and also emotional health, it not only creates this beautiful energy within ourselves, but it's also balancing our relationship and cultivating more love and service to other people. And
absolutely.
As moms, we want to be a good model for our children. And if you're not taking care of yourself, how are you supposed to teach our children that they need to really be independent and care for themselves and then give more to people? And I think that it's something that we often really forget, is that it's really important for us to make that awareness that this is the things that we're going through. How can I drop this or acknowledge it and then let it go? Because I feel like the acknowledge part is the hardest part. Like sometimes we just pretend we don't see anything.
Right.
We build the wall and I know it's there. And then when we buried it way deep down, in long term, we're going to have a much bigger problem because, like you said, we build up this block and you have to take much more time to crumble it, really.
Exactly. And, self-care can be very, very simple things. I mean, when we know we need something, I know something about women is that sometimes women don't ask for help. They want to do it all. I'm not saying that they can't do it all. Absolutely. You can do a lot. Women are tough. Women are strong. But sometimes we need help. Don't be afraid to ask for help. When I had my children, I remember with my first, I knew that I couldn't handle everything myself. And I was okay with that. Once I was able to acknowledge the fact that I can't do this alone, I'm going to need help, I started asking for help. I asked my mother-in-law for help, asked my mom for help. Luckily, they were both in the same city as I am. I made sure I asked my husband for help whenever I needed it and say, listen, carry the baby now. I want a nap for like an hour, or can you do this, so I can do something else. I would have my mother-in-law cook a few days a week and my mom cook a few days a week. The first 3 months, I knew that I just needed to connect with my baby. I wanted to forget about work, forget about everything else, and say that I need to take care of myself because I knew I wasn't sleeping enough. And I need to take care of this baby because if there's one thing I've learned, you've got to fill your cup first before you pour it out to someone else. You can't pour from an empty cup. You have to take care of yourself. And when you're able to take care of yourself, you are going to do so much better for others. You're not going to be able to be there for others if you're not taking care of yourself. It just doesn't work. So know what you need. Be ready to ask for help. And something as simple as like, I need a hug right now. Ask for it. Ask your partner, or if you have another child, just, cuddle with your child. Or if you need something to eat or drink, ask someone else to do it if you are not up for doing it. Whatever it is, ensure that you need the help that you need. So I hear a knock on my door. I'm sorry about that. My kids. All right. So know what you need, ask for help. Most importantly, pay attention to what's happening to your body. Sometimes we're like, oh my goodness, I need more sleep, but I'm not going to go and get more sleep. A lot of times we'll be like, oh, I'll sleep later, or I'll sleep tonight, or I'll sleep when the baby sleeps. But if your body is screaming for something, please listen and pay attention to that. You're going to thank yourself later on. We think, we can do it all. We can be it all. Sometimes we can, but sometimes we can't. Sometimes we do need help. So It's okay if, you know, if you ask for help. When your friends say, hey, what do you need? What can I do? Tell them, hey, I'm going to need this and this. Do you think you can help me out, to come and babysit or just watch my kids so I can sleep? Trust me, get all the help that you can. That's why they say it takes a village to raise a child, because you cannot do this alone. And when you acknowledge the fact that it's okay that I've asked people for help or I've asked others to help me, because I know I can't do this by myself and I'm perfectly okay with not doing this by myself, it makes it easier as time goes on. And then you will get all the help that you need. You have to just, reach out and talk to people and say, listen, I need this or I need that. Do you think you can help me? Do you think you can babysit? Do you think I can get to sleep for 2 hours? Whatever it is you need, but please take care of yourself first. Yes, the manis, the petties, and your hair and all of that will fall into place eventually. It does. You'll make more time for yourself later on. But start with these little things right now. Simple things as really just getting the sleep that you need, giving yourself some alone time, being able to sit outside in your porch and just getting 10 or 15 minutes, breathing, meditating, that really helps. A little bit every day helps, even exercising if you need to, you've got to do that self-care. And when you make that a habit, when you make that a practice, sometimes I would hold my baby and do squats, because that was the only time I could. And I would find different ways. If I'm cooking, I would hold my child next to me, and I would just talk to my kid randomly about stuff just to have a conversation, because I felt like that was the only intelligent conversation I was having all day. And I would make it fun and interesting. And, I really enjoyed my children because of this, because I was able to manage my emotions and realize that there's going to be a time that I'm going to get back to the things that I used to do. And that does come back. It will happen.
Right.
Just take care of yourself.
And I do think that I love the point that you were making, that you involve your children, because I've been doing that myself as well. Like when I cooked, I have my little one like right next to me and I talk to her. And sometimes that seems quite insane. Like even though she's like only 11 months old and she hasn't been able to talk yet, but it's like that conversation and building that foundation, teaching her how to communicate well, and also how can you express what you're feeling right now. And it's almost like teaching our kids when they are, observing our behaviors, how we react to things. It's almost like, we are teaching them how can we voice out and reach out for help when we need to, and also not suppressing any emotions. And also make that realization that, okay, apparently when I cry, I feel sad. So this is what it means. It's almost like, teaching our children how to express their emotions so they don't have a tantrum. So that's like very important too. Like, just having a random conversation with your baby and, building that habit out.
Right. And when you recognize your emotions, like when you're sad, like what you said, when you're sad, or maybe you feel like crying because you're upset, and that's perfectly normal. When we see our children going through that, we become more understanding towards their feelings, especially when they start crying for no reason. Because here's the thing, right? Children don't know better. When they don't know what to do, they'll cry. When they're upset, they'll cry. When they need to look for something, they'll cry. When the blankie is missing, they'll cry. They'll cry for everything because they're not emotionally intelligent. They don't know what else to do. The easiest thing to do at that moment is that if I'm upset, I'm just going to cry, because when I cry, mommy hears me, she's going to come to me, and she's going to try to figure out what I need. It's their way of saying, okay, I need you right now. I don't know how to deal with what I'm feeling. Help me through this. And then when we start to notice that in our children, we start to recognize, okay, if they're crying, what is it that they need right now? Do they need a hug? Do they need a diaper change? Do they need to be carried around? And then we're able to manage their emotions as well and learn to read what they need, because that's what this really comes down to. It's managing your emotions and the emotions of others. And if we can recognize that from babies and toddlers, we're going to get really good at managing adults when we have to read what they need from us. I mean, babies can't tell us what they need, but adults can. So it does become so much easier. And then you say, okay, oh, he's doing that kind of cry right now. So I think he needs a bottle. Oh, you start to recognize the different kinds of cries as time goes on. You're like, okay, I know which one that is. Or when they start shrieking like crazy, you're like, oh no, they've hurt themselves just now. So you start to pay attention to that, and you become resilient, and you become better at recognizing emotions. So it definitely helps your kid. Like now mine is 4 years old. And when he's upset, I'll say, well, are you feeling sad? Because when we're sad, this is how we feel. So I start explaining emotions to him. When he's happy and when he's excited, I'll say, well, this means that you're happy and excited and it feels good. So when he feels good, he'll come to me and say, Mama, I feel really good right now. I'm excited. He'll start running all over the place. So it's so nice to see that kind of development, that he is recognizing his own emotions. And as he becomes an adult, as he grows up, he'll recognize the newer emotions that start to develop over time. And it makes him more emotionally intelligent and being able to deal with what he's going through. So we definitely need to start this with our kids from so much younger.
Absolutely. And I think one important point is that I'm learning RTT. For those of you who don't know, RTT is rapid transformational therapy, and it's a hypnotherapy training. So one of the important lessons that we have to input for our children is that we can't ignore our emotions, because when we don't mention what's happening in ourselves or in our lives, children has really good imagination, and they observe, when they see parents are not happy or having a fight, but when the parents don't talk about it with the children, they immediately have this instant image in their mind. They oh my gosh, is it because of me? My parents are having all these arguments, right. And they build up all these internal filters in themselves and affect their emotional state. So as parents, it's so important for us to really communicate with our children too. So I think that's also related to, our emotional intelligence. How can we tell honestly and vulnerably with our children, and, this is what we're going through. And I would love to have your help and input as well, even though they're kids.
So I think the first thing is to be able to communicate. Because communication is part of emotional intelligence, meaning being able to listen intently with your eyes and with your ears. Because one key thing is that we have to be able to recognize body language. Sometimes the words would say something else, but the body language says something else. So when we're able to recognize that, hey, he's saying this, but his body language says something else. And immediately when we're able to see that and intently listen with our eyes and ears, we know how to communicate with that person. So listening is key in our communication. And recognizing the words, the tone, and body language, seeing if that indeed matches with what the other person is saying. Most importantly, being able to communicate how you feel, what you want, because a lot of times I know that people don't say what they want. They will often communicate what they don't want. They'll say, well, I don't want this, and I don't want that, and I don't want this to happen. But we have to shift that focus and say, well, instead of saying, I don't want to be late, for example, well, I want to be early, or I don't want to go through, I don't want to be upset, but we say, oh, I want to be happy. Well, what does that mean? Happiness is a, different emotion for everyone else. Different things make different people happy. So when we're able to really and truly communicate with each other what we want, what different things mean for us, with a parent and a child, that's when things get easier. That's when you start listening to your child, and the child starts paying attention to you as well. When I am talking to my 4-year-old, I try to avoid saying things like, don't do this and don't do that. Instead, I tell him, well, could you do that slowly, or could you put down the volume, or could you maybe play outside? Like, tell him what I want and have him focus on that versus saying, don't play inside, or don't make so much noise, or stuff like that. So I have to catch myself and say, no, focus on what you want. Because if I can train myself to ask for that, that means he'll pay attention to that as well. And he starts to ask for what he wants, what's on his mind, how he's feeling. And, and it takes practice. I mean, I'm not going to say that I've perfected it. I mean, I'm a new parent as well. And I'm learning from my child as well to see, well, what's the best way to communicate with him? And I ask a lot of questions. I find out how he's feeling, what he's feeling, what's on his mind. And then he starts to open up. And if he doesn't want to say stuff, I leave it alone. And then 5 minutes later, he'll be like, well, actually, Mama, now that you're asking about this, and then he starts to get into his conversation. So, and my daughter is a completely different personality. So personalities, come into play as well. One could be extroverted, one could be introverted. And that's a great thing about emotional intelligence, is being able to recognize different personalities. So, if you're dealing with an extrovert, they're going to be doing a lot of talking. And we need to pay attention to everything that they say. Sometimes everything they say is not what they mean because they're doing so much talking. And the introvert, on the other hand, will take their time and not share everything that's on their mind. They'll just share what they're comfortable with. So all of that is part of emotional intelligence. But indeed, in communicating with your child, be as honest, as open as you can with them, so they're able to do the same, because children model parents. Even when I talk with my husband, right, we're very cautious about how we are in front of our children. If we have an argument, we're not going to do that in front of our children. We'll just say, hey, let's park it. When the kids are asleep, we'll talk about this. And we just leave it alone for that moment, because when our children see that, they're going to have their interpretations of what's going on and what's happening. And we don't want to have to put them through that. And, as time goes on, I don't know, I guess things will change. I don't know how it goes, because they're still very little. But we have to be so cautious of how we are in front of our children, because, they will follow what you do. And sometimes when my son misbehaves, my husband will ask me, do I do that? Or do I behave that way? Because he knows that, our son is following everything that he does. So the first thing he'll say, well, do I see things this way as well? Because I think he must have got it from someone. Maybe it's me, or maybe it's someone else. So yeah, being cautious about your behavior in front of your child, and just staying as open as you can and how you feel about something. When we're upset about something that they do, we'll say, well, this makes us sad. We didn't like it that you did it this way. Do you think you could do this instead? Always say what you want and the way you want them to do things. That really helps.
This is all very insightful. And I am so glad that just having you on the ChillMoms podcast. And how can our audience find you and follow you on social media?
So I can be found on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and on Instagram. Just look for Sheetal Sujan. And I also have a free online course on emotional intelligence. And you can find that on my business site. That's www.libragroup.com/learningonline. I'll send you all the sites. You can put that on here. And I have a free course on emotional intelligence for those who want to learn the basics of emotional intelligence. And I have a premium course that we'll be releasing. That's great for those who are in leadership positions, those who are teachers and coaches, those who are parents, who want to dive in and dig in deeper into emotional intelligence. And I have all these different tools to manage your self-awareness, to regulate your emotions, to motivate yourself, and of course, manage your relationships. It's called Reset, Recharge, and Reinvent Your Life. Simple and practical tools to manage your life goals through emotional intelligence. So that will be releasing soon as well. And of course, I would love to offer a discount to all the listeners who want to do the premium course or who are interested in that. So Don, I'm going to send you that discount, and I'm sure you're going to have that in the
show notes
program. please send it to all our listeners so they get a discount on the course as well.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Sheetal. And I really hope that all the moms out here listening and building their empires really take charge of your emotions and communicate well. Take your self-care first and regulating what you're feeling and bring those awareness back into the surface and deal with it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. And it was amazing to be able to talk about this with you and to all the moms out there.
That's it for this episode. Thank you so much for listening to the ChillMoms podcast. If you would like to join our community, please visit facebook.com/groups/ChillMoms. And if you are thinking about starting a business or need mindset coaching and done running in circles feeling distracted, you can now work with me by visiting my website at dawnkummer.com. That's DAWNKUMMER.com. That's it for now, and I'll see you in the next episode of ChillMoms Podcast.